I'm going to start sitting in Virasana, but you can sit in whatever position is most comfortable for you. When I sit in Virasana, my ankles are a little bit tight, my knees could be a little bit tender at times. And so I like to use a blanket that's open once from shelf fold so that I support my shins with the feet hanging off the back. I also sit on a block. Now, in general, in Virasana, oh, I see Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. Good to see
Hello
you.
there. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Well, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. So if you have any questions, then you'll have to unmute yourself.
Alrighty.
Um, I'm not sure how Kisa's been doing her classes, but essentially my class is like a full guided class. So I don't really stop to look and observe your poses. I'm trying to give as much information as possible to just navigate through on your own. So if you do have a question, please feel free to interrupt and ask away. But as we get started, I'm just going to mute the other audio so that there's no overlaying. I do record these classes and post them online as well, and it can just diminish a little bit of that extra sound. Do you have any questions before we get started though, Rebecca?
Oh, sounds like the same way Kisa does hers too. So
Cool. Awesome. Perfect. Well, I'm so glad that you came and that you're here. Good to see you. Okay. So we had someone else join. Welcome, Evelyn. All righty. So we're going to get started today. I'm set up to sit in Virasana, but you can sit in whichever seated posture is most comfortable for you. In my Virasana, my ankles, my knees can get a little tender, so I like to use some extra support. I open up one of my blankets once from shelf fold to place under my shins, and then I like to sit back on a block. Again, if this is really uncomfortable or you're not exactly sure how to support yourself, then we can have that conversation at another time, and you can choose a posture that's a little bit more comfortable and at ease for your practice. In Virasana, we start with the thighs together, and with these extra props, I have my feet hanging off the back of the ledge of the blanket, shins supported, ankles hanging off. My thighs are together, and essentially I'm going to come back to sit between the heels. My hips float, so I'm going to use a block to support and just wedge right underneath my hips here. So I'm sitting between my heels, my thighs are together. I have some support underneath the shins for Virasana, or hero's pose. As you find a comfortable seated position for yourself, you really want to prioritize the ability to draw inward, focus on your body, start to tune into your breath as we make this transition from regular daily life into our yoga practice. There are some aspects to consider when it comes to form, and usually we want to integrate that practice of form because it just causes a little bit more ease in the physical body. It makes it a little bit easier to draw inward without distractions. So there's kind of these two aspects of yoga. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the consciousness. So we want to feel that without all the thinking and the conceptual determining and awareness going on. But then there's this other aspect of diminishing discomfort, managing pain, and understanding form. So in your yoga practice, starting to cultivate that awareness of which area is your brain in. Are we trying to still the brain, or are we in a place of trying to support our physical body in order to accomplish stilling the brain? So that's usually what, especially in Iyengar yoga, we have this layer of form and adjustments and fixing things, and it becomes this very intellectual process. But ultimately, with time and with practice, we can diminish a lot of that thought effort, and we know what we need. We can just pull into it and get into that space a little bit quicker. So with that said, I do want to provide enough information so that you walk away with some tips on form and hopefully access a little bit more comfort in your poses, or a little bit more effortless effort, but then also using and integrating some time to really let go of that thought process and fully be in the moment. So here in Virasana, sometimes this can be a little bit of an agitated pose. We get into it and it's not very naturally comfortable for some of us. And one thing that might be a little bit tender is the knees, ankles, and a lot of that tension can come from ankles and feet, or not sitting up high enough, and there's just not enough strength and mobility built in the knee, or really space in the knee joint. One small adjustment that you can make in your feet that might help these areas is looking at the bottom of your feet and lining up the middle toe with the very center of your heel. Often the toes, they'll slip out to the side slightly. And as you pick up your toes and adjust your foot, so middle toe is in line with the middle of the heel, try and fan your big toe towards your hips. As you spread the toes, opening up that space across the toe ball mounts, the pinky side of the foot actually starts to open up a little bit more. You have a little less pressure on the outer ankle because of this. Foot's a little bit more open, and you're less likely to have foot cramping as well, which is very, very common here in Virasana. As you sit, if you notice that some extra support would be beneficial, go ahead and integrate it. Taking a smooth, steady inhale and a smooth, steady exhale. If you feel maybe a little bit low today, or even some sadness, something is weighing on your heart, can leave the eyes open slightly, just allowing the gaze to soften. And rather than being focused on one point or another, allow your sight to spread towards your peripheral vision. The vision starts to spread outward. If you do feel comfortable closing your eyes, notice if there's any tension being held in the eye socket or across the eyelids, even while the eyes are closed. And as you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, and just tune your mind into the sensations of your body, noticing how your breath expands and contracts the rib cage, the lungs. On your next inhale, bring the hands together in Namaskar, prayer pose. As you lift the elbows slightly, giving a gentle pressure in the palms, try to spread from the very center of your chest, across the collarbones and out to the shoulders. The chest becomes nice and wide and broad. We'll start class today by chanting 3 ohms together as a group. And if you'd like, you can just sit and listen. Let's start with an inhale. Notice if any tension started to rise in the neck or the face. See if you can let it go. Nice deep inhale to lift the chest. And that during your exhale, allow the chin to come down towards the chest, surrendering the head to the heart, intellect to intuition. And slowly lift the head, open the eyes, and bring your hands down to the thighs. We're going to practice in Parvatasana for a moment. So if your legs are crossed, you'll switch the cross of the legs. Moving into Parvatasana, little mountain pose. We'll lace the fingers together and press the palms away so that the arms are straight. Take a moment here to observe how the palms are spreading and see if you can really spread near the heel of your palm from the very center out to the sides. So you turn the inner arms up, outer arms down, Take the arms up and overhead. So with that rotation in the upper arm, there's a little bit more muscularity that comes. And as you turn the inner arms back, outer arms forward, try to draw the shoulders away from the ears. So we're keeping a little bit of the form of the arms being straight, pressing through the heels of the palms. But there's also this draw of the shoulders away from the ears, starting to get the back of the body a little bit more active, a little bit more involved in the pose. And on your next exhale, take your chin down towards the chest. Here you're going to be able to feel a little bit more of a stretch in the back of the neck, maybe even the tops of the shoulders. And with that stretch of the chin moving towards the chest, see if you can draw the shoulders even farther down the back, even more away from the ears. No matter what form you're working on or integrating in your own practice, try to always have a sense of upward lift, upward rising. So no matter what's happening in the arms or the head or the neck, let the rib cage start to grow away from the hips. Notice the effort that's needed to lift the side waists. And slowly lift your head, bring the hands down. Notice which pinky is on the loose end, and we'll switch the grasp of the fingers. Turning the palms away with the arms straight for Parvatasana. Coming into it with a little bit more mindfulness, so keeping the chest broad, rolling the shoulders back, and as you take the arms up and overhead, observe how the upper arms might be turning, and often when the inner arm dips forward or rotates forward, you're gonna feel a little bit more tension in the sides of the neck or tops of the shoulders. As we roll those inner arms back, can lengthen a little bit more. Then bring the chin down towards the chest. Using that length in the back of the neck to remind you to reflect on what's happening in those shoulders, what's happening in that space. As you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, try to breathe into the sides of the rib cage. And slowly lift the head, bring the hands down, sitting up nice and tall. You can come forward into Adho Mukha Virasana, especially if you're sitting in hero's pose or Virasana. We're really just using this pose to open up the backs of the knees, open up the backs of the thighs, getting the legs supported. If you notice that your ankles or knees are tender when coming out of Virasana, might be a sign that you need a little bit more support. And then we'll clear our mats off. We're gonna need some blankets and blocks today as we get started. We're gonna start just having some blocks along the outside of the mat since we're gonna wanna grab them, and then we're probably gonna put them back off to the side as we transition through some poses. So I wanna show you where we're headed, and then we'll practice this together. So we're gonna start in Adho Mukha Virasana, and then move into Ekapada Adho Mukha Virasana. So I'm starting with my wrists slightly forward from my shoulders, knees slightly back from the hips, curling the toes under and lifting the hips high. We'll bend the knees, feet are wide, squeeze the thighs together, and we want to keep that contraction of the thighs as if they're trying to squeeze together the whole time, no matter what stage we're at in this pose. We'll come down to rest before moving into Ekapada, but as we move into Ekapada, we'll step the feet together. I'm just going to ask you to kick one leg back, not very high, but trying to prioritize that squeezing of the thighs sensation while your inner thighs turn back. So this time legs are low, we're just getting that rotation in the hip socket with that femur bone. Then we'll switch and we'll move to more of a kick, drawing the knee into the chest, kicking that leg back as high as you can. It's okay if your standing heel lifts off the floor. And then we'll switch, drawing the knee in and kick. And we'll do that a couple of times. You might even come in and try and kick back about 3 times on the same side, noticing if you can get the leg higher, but also trying to keep that internal rotation of the thighs. And then we'll come down to rest. Knees wide, toes together. You can sit back on the heels or rest in this tabletop-like position if that's a little more comfortable for you. So that's where we're headed to get started. So you can clear your mat off. If this is uncomfortable for your wrists or you're having a hard time supporting yourself because the shoulders or neck are uncomfortable, you can practice this with the hands at the wall in Ardha Uttanasana. So essentially, if you were standing, you'd have the knees underneath the hips and you would walk the feet back into this type of position here, but just standing. So that is an option if your hands are bothering you, or wrists or shoulders. Let's go ahead and get started in Adho Mukha Svanasana. So with the index finger pointing forward, wrists slightly forward from the shoulders, knees slightly back from the hips, curl your toes under and lift the hips up. And so take a smooth, steady inhale, smooth, steady exhale. Just observe where your downward dog pose is today. As you press into your palms, just observe where most of that weight is. Usually it's near the wrist, it's near the thumb. See if you can spread out that pressure to the knuckles of the fingers, to the pinky side of the palm. And you'll take your feet wide as the mat. Bend the knees, squeeze your thighs together. And as you press your palms down, try to lift your side waist up, keeping those knees bent in towards the belly. As you make a nice long line from your wrists all the way up to your hips, to your sit bones, notice how the hips start to lift. The sit bones start to lift up towards the ceiling. Now, keeping that squeeze of your thighs together, slowly straighten the legs. Heels can be lifted, but squeezing the thighs together, hips lifted, palms pressed firm. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale and let the head hang. Notice which tension you're holding in the back of the neck. And then come down to rest. You can take the knees wide, toes together for Adho Mukha Virasana, or rest in that tabletop position for a breath or two. And then we'll come back into Adho Mukha Svanasana. So index finger points forward, wrist slightly forward from the shoulders, knees slightly back from the hips. Curl the toes under, lift the hips up. You can bring the feet together. Bend the knees towards the chest, squeeze the thighs together. Now you have a contact point. So you press the palms down evenly, pinky side down, knuckles down. Press the palms down to lift the hips up. You'll have the side waists get long, sit bones start to lift towards the ceiling, straightening the legs, bringing the heels down to the floor, but keep the squeezing of the thighs together. Now moving into Ekapada, I want you to draw your left knee into your chest and kick it back to the wall behind you. Now as you hold it, think about squeezing the thighs together, turning the inner thighs back. Like you're trying to move into that pigeon-toed position with the feet. And left foot down. Right knee into the chest. Kick that right foot back. So we're not trying to get as high as we need to right now. Instead, we're focusing on squeezing the thighs together, turning the inner thighs back, pressing evenly into the palms, and then bring that foot down and come down to rest. Knees wide, toes together, sitting back on the heels, or moving into that tabletop position, whichever is most comfortable for you. Now this next time we're going to do the kicking, and it's important that you can keep a little bit of awareness in what's happening in the legs, and you're going to feel a little bit more ease in the pressure of your palms if you can keep a little bit of your mind and how your weight is moving across the knuckles of the fingers. So let's go ahead and do Ekapada Adho Mukha Svanasana. Eka means one, pada means foot. We have downward facing dog. So wrists slightly forward from the shoulders, knees slightly back from the hips, curling the toes under to lift the hips up, bringing the feet together, and try and pump your heels down to the floor, squeeze the thighs in. Now you're gonna bring your left knee in towards your chest and we're gonna kick. And this time I want you to go for height. I want you to try and kick that left foot back as high as you can. And once you're there, hold it. lift the heel up towards the ceiling and turn the inner thighs towards each other. So you press the knuckles and the palms together, or I mean down into the floor, lift the sit bones up, and then switch sides. Left foot down, right foot kicking 3 times. 1, 2, 3, as high as you can, kicking that foot up. Turn the inner thighs back to the wall behind you. You can press the palms down. Now just for a moment, look at the thumbs. So you look at the thumbs, draw the shoulders away from the ears. Notice how tight the neck might be. Shoulders away from the ears, keeping that, let the head hang, and bring the foot down, come down to rest. Knees wide, toes together, sitting back on the heels, Adho Mukha Virasana. Now we're gonna have some blocks nearby. We're moving from Adho Mukha Svanasana into Parsvottanasana. So if you're not sure about that, I can demonstrate. So from downward facing dog, bringing that left foot forward, and you want about 3.5 feet of space from heel to heel. Blocks can be helpful if you're feeling some stiffness in the back or the shoulders here, so that we can keep the spine nice and straight. Really have what's called a concave back. And then back into Adho Mukha Svanasana. I set the blocks aside, step that foot back, and switch. So Adho Mukha Svanasana into Parsvottanasana. Okay, let's go ahead and do. So coming into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Bring your feet together, right foot forward. Should be about 3.5 to 4 feet of space from heel to heel. You can grab your blocks. Take a few breaths here. Just notice what's happening in your body. See if you can visualize what your spine might be doing. What is your neck, shoulders doing? For a moment, bend your right knee, so your front knee. And as you press your foot down into the floor, try and scrub it back to the wall behind you. And as you press into that back foot, that left foot, try and scrub that foot forward. Try and keep that resistance of the feet scrubbing and moving towards each other as you straighten the right leg. Parsvottanasana. Taking a smooth, steady inhale and exhale. Lifting the chest forward. Spreading across the collarbones. With the eyes and the face soft. And then you can walk your blocks forward if you feel stable doing so. Nice stretch in the side waists. Sometimes that right side, or the side of your front leg, can get a little bit short. But now with the hands forward slightly, if you can stretch that right hip back so that right side waist gets nice and long. And then set the blocks aside, hands to the floor, bending the right knee and back into Adho Mukha Svanasana, feet together. And then left foot forward. About 3.5 to 4 feet of space from heel to heel. If you notice that your low back is quite tender, you could turn the toes to both point straight forward. However, the more classic and traditional posture has that back heel in slightly. So your back toes point towards the upper outer corner of the mat. You can decide which position works best for you, for your hips, for your back. As you take a few breaths here, hands on the blocks, trying to maintain that concave back position in the spine. A couple of attributes to that concave back are that the shoulders move onto the back of the spine, the chest is quite broad. And as you lift the chest forward, we want to keep some length in the spine, keeping some length in the neck specifically. You're going to notice that the gaze is just down towards the floor, maybe towards the front of your mat for today. Bending the left knee, try and scrub that left foot back to the right foot. And then with that right foot, try and scrub it forward. And as you straighten the left leg, see if you can keep that little resistance of squeezing the thighs together, scrubbing the feet towards each other. And if you can manage all of that mentally, try to turn the inner thighs back, both inner thighs back to the wall behind you. So there's an internal rotation on the thighs. And you'll walk your blocks forward, getting some length in the side waists here. So you press the palms down. Notice if that left side is a little bit shorter than the right. As you scrub the feet towards each other, see if you can hook that outer left hip back to the wall behind you as you lift the chest forward. And then setting the blocks aside, down on the floor, returning to Adho Mukha Svanasana. Take the legs wide for this one. Letting the head hang. Taking a few breaths. Filling the sides of the rib cage. Breathing into the front of the body. Usually the back of the body is a little bit more open here in this pose. As you breathe into the front of the body, chest, the abdomen, if you can lift that area in the front of the body, lifting from the pubic bone all the way up to the center of the chest. And then coming down to rest, either in that tabletop position or taking the knees wide, toes together, Adho Mukha Virasana. And then we'll come up to stand. I'll shift my view slightly. So now we're going to get ready for just a little bit of Virabhadrasana 3 prep. And we're going to break it down. Virabhadrasana 3, Warrior 3 pose. We're going to use some blocks and we're going to come into it a little bit more mindfully here. So we're not just going to jump into Warrior 3. We're actually just going to do a couple little practice things before we give it a go. At any point, if you feel unstable and like the blocks aren't working for you and the version that I'm providing isn't working for you, then using the wall is very, very helpful. Going from Ardha Uttanasana is half intense stretch pose. So the hands are as high as the hips. As you walk the feet back, the hips are over the heels, wrists are in line with the hips, and bring the feet together and just lift the legs back from there. So if you're feeling unsupported, maybe pressure in the wrist is bothersome, or you're just feeling a little shaky and unstable, that's a great practice to go with. However, I'm going to practice in the center of my mat with a couple of blocks. I'm going to show you how we're going to progress with this today, and then you can decide which version is best for you, whether it's at the wall or in the center of the room, but the steps will be pretty similar. So we're going to start in Uttanasana. I have my feet together. My heels are underneath my hips. My wrists are slightly forward so that they're underneath my shoulders here. And take a few breaths here. Then we're just gonna lift one leg up back behind us. If you feel stable here, you can even reach the opposite hand forward. So just getting some cross body length. Then bringing the hand down, bringing the foot down, and we'll do the other side. The next progression piece with all of this is to start actually bending the knees as we stretch. So I'm gonna lift my back leg up. I'm gonna bend my standing knee, and I'm gonna reach my hand forward here and just see if I can start to become light on that hand that might be down on the block. And just observing, is your foot lagging down to the floor with the wrist up, or can we get the wrist, hips, heel all in the same line here? And then we'll switch. So we're just practicing that, a little bit of that alignment, bending the standing leg, trying to get the wrist, shoulders, hips, and back heel all in alignment here. Light on that last hand that's a contact point. And last but not least, you'll have the opportunity practicing Virabhadrasana 3. You can reach the hand forward, get light on that hand, try and make a nice straight line, and then eventually we straighten that standing leg for Virabhadrasana 3. You can even just step the back foot back if you get unstable, and we'll come back and redo the other side. Okay? And then we'll come to stand. So let's go ahead and get started. If the wall works best for you, you can practice all of those things I demonstrated at the wall. You'll just have the arms forward. So in the center of the mat, bring your feet together into Tadasana and bend at your hips with the legs straight, hands onto the blocks, wrists will be underneath the shoulders. As you take a few breaths here, lift the chest forward, just observe that alignment from your shoulders to your hips. Ultimately, we want to aim to have the body parallel to the floor once we move into Virabhadrasana 3. Just building a sense of what that is. You might not fully be in that position here in Uttanasana, but just understanding where your spine is in relationship to the space around you is helpful. We're just going to start with something that's attainable. Go ahead and lift that back left leg up behind you. As you lift that left leg up, just like in Ekapada, we want the inner thighs to be turning back, lifting that heel as high as the hip. See if you can look back, build a sense of whether it's dragging to the floor or if it's lifting above the hip. Just start to build a sense of where it's at spatially. And then bringing that leg down. Switching, taking the right leg up. Inner thigh turns up towards the ceiling. Notice where that leg is in space. Just observe if it's in line with the hip, if it's above, if it's below. And can you keep those legs stick straight? Very nice. And then bringing that leg down. Now we're going to just be challenging our balance a little bit. So we're going to lift the left leg back and take the right arm forward. Okay? So starting with the left leg back. Get right on that, get light on the right hand and reach the right hand forward. This might be a little bit more challenging. We're getting into a little bit more balance. Notice where the wrist is and where the heel is in relationship to the rest of your body. Can you make a nice straight line with those? As you reach the right fingertips forward, press the left heel back and then bring the hand down, bring the foot down. Very nice. Switching sides. So right foot lifts up, heel in line with the hips. Come light on the left hand, reach the left hand forward. Notice where your arm is, where your heel is in space. As you reach through your left hand, press out through that right heel. And then hand down, foot down. Taking a breath here in Uttanasana. So now this is where we're going to practice lifting the hands off the blocks with that standing knee bent slightly, acting kind of like hydraulics. So we're kind of acting like a big spring with that quadricep, with that thigh bone and that thigh muscle. So very similar process to what we've been doing. Go ahead and lift the left leg up. Now bend the right knee slightly. And as you reach your right hand forward, notice how you might have to shift your weight on that standing foot to become light on the left hand. Observe where are the hands, where is that heel in space? Try and lift the hand off the block, stretching that left foot back, reaching the right fingertips forward, all with that right knee bent to start. And then bring the hands down, bring the foot down. Moving to the other side. The right leg lifts up behind you. Go ahead and bend the left knee. As you reach the left fingertips forward, see if you can come light on the right hand. Reach both fingertips forward, right heel back. Taking a few breaths here. Where's your heels in space? Where are your wrists in space? And then hands down, foot down. Taking a breath here in Uttanasana. So here we go. We're going into Virabhadrasana 3. All we're doing is adding the straightening of the standing leg. We'll just do it slowly and observe and notice how your balance is and what you might need for more stability. Lifting the left leg up, bend the right knee. Start by reaching the right hand forward. Light on the left hand, reach the left hand forward. Now slowly start to straighten the right leg. Keep turning the inner left thigh up, chest forward, Virabhadrasana 3. And then hands down, foot down, Uttanasana. Last side, last time. Left leg up, or excuse me, right leg up, left knee bends. Reach the left hand forward, getting light on that right hand, reach the right hand forward. Slowly straightening that left leg. Virabhadrasana 3. Hands down, foot down. You can take your hands to your hips, come up to stand. And we'll take the legs wide, Prasarita Padottanasana. So you can come into this position with me, taking the legs wide, toes turn in, hands underneath the shoulders, and then walk the hands forward. So getting some length. This is almost like downward facing dog, but with the legs very wide. And the heels are a little bit more in line with the hips. Taking a smooth, steady inhale, smooth, steady exhale. And you'll walk your hands back in and bring your hands in line with the ankles. Your hands in line with the ankles, palms are on the blocks or on the floor, arms straight, chest lifts forward. And on an exhale, we're going to let the head hang. Bend the elbows, let the head hang. There's a little bit of resistance in the practice to press the outer foot bone down, lift the hips up. But we also want to create some space in the neck. So you squeeze your elbows together, lift your shoulders away from the ears so the neck can be long. And then straighten the arms, chest reaches forward, and walk your blocks forward so the wrists are underneath the shoulders. And then coming up to stand, hands on the hips, coming up. Inhale, toe step the feet together, back into Tadasana. And then we're gonna practice our inversion, Salamba Sarvangasana, so shoulder stand. If you don't have the props for that, or you're not comfortable going upside down, perhaps neck and shoulder stuff, if you're menstruating, I'd recommend not going upside down as well. And that's where we can practice Saitu Bandha Sarvangasana with a block. Otherwise, if you are going into shoulder stand, you can go ahead and get your props set up for that. And shoulder stand, as you practice in the center of the room, there's all kinds of ways you could practice shoulder stand. But if you're practicing in the center of the room, then you're going to want some support for Halasana, plow pose. And we'll also take the legs wide while in plow pose. It was like Upavista Konasana, upside down. Using anywhere from 3 to 5 blankets, depending on what you have at home, how how familiar your neck might be in this pose. I'd also recommend having some support for underneath the hips, like a bolster or a couple of extra blankets. This is helpful because we hang our head off of the blanket stack, shoulders are on the blanket stack. And when we're in the pose, we don't necessarily need that support of the hips, although it can be helpful to get people up who don't feel enough strength to roll themselves into Halasana. But it's really when we come out, we want to let the head hang on the floor. We want this whole throat area to open up. And so having support underneath the hips can make that a little bit more attainable and not so uncomfortable. So whatever posture that you're practicing today, then that's essentially what you're going to need is either some blankets and a bolster for Salamba Sarvangasana or a block for underneath the hips in Setu Bandha. Whichever one you're practicing, there's a couple of similar elements. One of them being what's happening in the upper body, that the back of the arm is pressing down, shoulders are pulling onto the back. And then we have the head in what's called this Jalandhara Bandha. So it's a little bit of a bind, a lock here in the neck. And with that, the chin comes towards the chest and the back of the neck is very long. This position is highly recommended for people who are super anxious, have headaches and migraines, or even facing some depression. And so this is really one of the more similar components to Salamba Sarvangasana. And in order to get into this position without there being very much strain in the sides of the neck, we want those upper arms to be strong, elbows and the entire upper arm pressing down into the floor, whichever posture that you're in. So I'm going to try and talk through Sarvangasana today, although I know it's not as clear as when I practice Setu Bandha Sarvangasana. But if you're in to form a bridge pose or Setu Bandha, you can go ahead and start laying down. Have your block within an arm's reach. For Salamba Sarvangasana, I like to use a strap just to hold on to. I used to strap my upper arms all the time, and then I just started holding on to it. And so when my hands are behind my back, I actually hold on to the ends, palms face up, and I try and pull the tail ends away to draw the elbows in, trying to build that muscularity myself rather than having the upper arms held by the strap. Although that is an option for you if it's something you're familiar with, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna walk through Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, and then I'm gonna walk through Salamba Sarvangasana as I come into it. So for those in Setu Bandha Sarvangasana, you're gonna start laying on the floor, have your block nearby, bringing the heels in towards the hips, as long as your knees are comfortable. And as you hold onto the side edges of the mat, turn the inner arms up, outer arms down. Try and tuck the shoulders underneath you. Bring a little bit more weight to the tops of the shoulders. And as you press the feet down, lift the hips up. Grab your block, have it under the tailbone here. See if you can tuck the shoulders underneath you once more. And with the tailbone supported, and straighten the legs one at a time. You can always lower that block. There's about 3 settings. If you have a block, a low, medium, and high, you can always lower it. For those moving into Salamba Sarvangasana, strap is nearby. Shoulders are on the blanket stack while the head hangs off. You want about 2 inches or a fist's distance. And we have these knuckles from the knuckle to the second knuckle. Want it to be about 2 inches of space between the rolled edge of the blanket and the tops of the shoulders. You can have your strap within an arm's reach. Then coming into Halasana, knees towards the chest, press your upper arms down, feet to the floor, tuck the shoulders underneath you. So more weight is on the tops of the shoulders. So you press the upper arms down, lift the thighs towards the ceiling, press the thighs up. And grab your strap, palms face the ceiling. Try to pull the tail ends of the strap away as you press your elbows down into the floor. And coming up into Salamba Sarvangasana, hands on the back, one leg at a time. Lifting the legs up. So the pubic bone moves forward, press the ankles back, thighs back. You can have the ankles a little bit wider than hip width apart. Notice how your weight is spread across the upper arm. Whichever position you're in, just observe how the breath fills the lungs, fills the rib cage. We're in Sarvangasana. You can bring the feet down into Halasana. And take the legs wide. And feet together in Halasana. If you're in Setubandha, you can bring the feet in, lift the hips up, remove the block. If you're in Halasana, you can start to roll out, letting the head hang off the blanket stack so the throat is open. If you're coming out of Sarvangasana, you can push yourself off the blanket stack so that the shoulders are on the floor. Having the blankets under the hips, under the legs, kind of creates this supported bridge pose. And then you'll press yourself all the way off your support. So spine is flat on the floor. Rolling to your side and press yourself up to sit. We'll move into a seated posture. Do a brief seated twist and then lay down in Shavasana. We'll use a couple of blankets to sit on. So you want to sit on enough support so that you're comfortable with the legs crossed. Sitting nice and tall. So sit on your blanket stack. We'll have the legs crossed in Swastikasana. So the feet are a little bit more underneath the thighs. Knees come more in line with the hips and the hip sockets. Take a smooth, steady inhale, smooth, steady exhale. Let go of any tension that might have risen in the face or the body. And bring your hands alongside your hips. Draw the shoulders back, elbows back, so you feel that broadness across the front of the shoulder, across the collarbone. And we'll twist to the right, trying to prioritize keeping that width across the chest. If you feel comfortable, lift your chin, look over the right shoulder. On your exhale, soften the belly. See if you can twist a little bit deeper. And then coming back through center, twisting off to the left. Chest broad. Do you feel comfortable? Lift the chin, look over the left shoulder. Breathing into the upper outer corners of the chest. Breathing into the sides of the rib cage. And coming back through center. Notice which leg is closest to you, and we'll switch the cross of the legs. Still in Swastikasana, peaceful pose. Feet under the thighs, knees forward from the hips. And twisting to the right. As you take a smooth, steady inhale and a smooth, steady exhale, notice where your body might need the twist more than others, or where in your body might need the twist more than others. And as you inhale and exhale, Use your breath to create space. Let go of any tension that might be holding on from class. Coming back through center, twisting off to the left. Starting to lengthen your inhale and exhale. Slowing its pace. And coming back through center. We'll lay down in Shavasana. You can lie down flat on the floor if you're comfortable with that, or you can use a blanket for underneath the head. Sometimes it's comfortable for the hips, for the low back to have some support underneath the knees. You're welcome to integrate that as well. At the beginning of class, I mentioned that there's two sides to a yoga practice. There's what actual yoga is, which is yoga chitta vritti nirodha, which is the stilling of the fluctuations in the consciousness. And there's the process to getting there. How do we get to a place with the consciousness still, with the mind soft? We've done a decent amount of practice today. We've gotten the body warmed up. We've built this mind-body connection so we can feel these different areas of our being. And now as we move into Shavasana, it really comes down to maintaining that mind-body connection in stillness. Even though we don't have a project or a task in front of us in Shavasana, we want to use this Shavasana to just absorb, to just feel those areas of our body that we're working today, that we're active, just allowing them to be, focusing on the breath and how the breath might affect or influence the body. And so as you lay down in Shavasana, with whatever support you need to be most comfortable, just observe how your weight is resting on the floor, how your weight is resting on the props. And with every exhale, see if you can release more of your weight into that support. Letting go of everything, everywhere. Observe your body breathing rather than trying to change or manipulate the breath. Just allow it to be. Observe its own natural, harmonious rhythm without your manipulation. As you gently lengthen your inhale and exhale, let go of any subconscious tension that might have risen. Slowly place your hands on your abdomen, on your belly. Take this moment to appreciate your body for all that it's done and all that it will do. Appreciate your mind for taking the time to practice and harmonize with your body today. And feel gratitude and acknowledgement towards your heart, that organ in the center of your chest dedicated to life. You can move slowly and take your time coming up. Start by bending the knees, taking the right arm up and overhead, rolling to your side, and feel free to just rest your head on your upper arm for a few breaths here. Whenever you're ready, you can start to push yourself up to a comfortable seated posture, using the props around you to sit comfortably. I appreciate you for taking the time to practice yoga today. Thank you so much for taking the time to practice with me. Namaste. Well, I appreciate you all for being here and for joining me today. If you ever have any questions or discomfort or things that you'd like me to consider as I teach, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear about it, love to hear about your experience. Other than that, thanks again for being here, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next class, hopefully.